following is a conversation with Dr. Brendan Mullan. He is an associate professor of physics at Point Park University. We sat down to discuss the recent developments from the James Webb Telescope, the future of humanity as a multi-planet civilization, as well as aliens, and much more. This is the Not Just Politics podcast. To support us, check out our page on the Say What Needs Saying network and our links for our social medias in the description. Enjoy.
So how you been?
I can't
Jumping in.
complain. How are you?
Good.
Excellent.
I was sort of talking before you started recording, but how's your what are the new developments in the world of looking for aliens? What do we got?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm trying to think because I don't actually follow this as much as I used to, but there's been a lot more acceptance of the idea of the field, at least.
Mm-hmm.
There's whole working groups at NASA. There are collections of my colleagues who form research groups and have conferences and develop methods towards the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and particularly for technosignatures.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually, if you remember, we covered this a little bit in the class that you had. If you use technology in some very large way, it's going to have some manner of electromagnetic signature, or basically light to produce. It could be light that you could see, it could be light that we can't see, like X-rays or infrared light or radio, but it's looking for that signature that doesn't obviously come from something natural like a star or a planet.
Mm-hmm. Like a Dyson sphere.
Yeah,
would be one of
good
those
memory.
things that, we do.
Dyson swarms. I was part of a search team that looked for evidence of Dyson swarms in older data archives for a previous generation of space telescopes. But now there are groups looking at kind of the next level, seeing what they could get from the current generation of telescopes and what we might try to look for in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting. There's a couple of threads being tugged there on the technosignature side, on the biosignature side, looking for chemical evidence of life or something like it in the atmospheres of exoplanets, worlds orbiting around other stars. And it's all kind of coming together in a really neat and interesting and organic way that hasn't before.
Yeah. Do you think is James Webb gonna? Obviously would have an easier time looking for that stuff, but has James Webb found anything that has made people sort of take a double take?
Well, it's a little bit too soon for that because the Jimmy Webb, as I like to call it, is
That's great.
Hasn't been
I
up
like
there in a
that.
while. I'm the only one who says it, so
Yeah, I might adopt that.
Okay.
I like it.
The Jimmy Webb.
the Jimmy Webb.
Yeah. So far, what we've seen is some preliminary images stitched together from some of its first light, some of the first data that's come down that has to do with galaxies, so large collections of stars and the planets that orbit them on scales of hundreds of thousands or millions of light years, so much bigger than the scale of planets and solar systems. So you might have seen some of those pictures floating around the internet where it's a composite of some older Hubble Space Telescope images that are in optical light, the light that we can see, and infrared that's coming in from James Webb.
Okay.
So you're kind of stitching together pictures that have to do with what your eyes could see and what, if your eyes were attuned to infrared or radio light even, what you could see. And it's basically a look of how stars are formed on largest scales.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen images of those. Those have been floating around the public for some time now, and some more local things in the galaxy, like some interstellar clouds of gas and dust that have pretty pictures associated with them.
Yeah, I've seen
from
some
that
of them.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what's been kind of headed our way recently. Some of the other science goals of the Jimmy Webb are to kind of look way back in space, way back early in time, to see light from the first stars being formed, and then training some of their more sensitive instruments to exoplanets and trying to get spectra, basically a split up rainbow of infrared light that could show us if there's some interesting things going on in the atmospheres of those exoplanets. I haven't seen anything like that. It's going to take some time. So
yeah, I was gonna say it's probably. Do you think is that like a couple years down the road?
Yeah,
thing?
I'd say that's a safe bet. I mean, it's one of the top priorities, but It's also something where you're just getting a slow trickle of light from any one of these candidate worlds that you want to look at. So it's going to take some time to actually get
Mhm.
all those photons of light together and process them in a way that is unambiguously something interesting.
Yeah, I saw that it got hit by a little piece of rock.
Oh, yeah,
and
I
it
heard
like
about that.
smashed one of the mirrors on the like outside.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess they designed it so that the mirrors can move and they can readjust so that the pictures didn't really get sabotaged.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the good things about its design, right? It was origami folded,
Yeah.
which is good because you can't shove something that big into a rocket without having to fold it up first. So that is one of the benefits of its design. It can take a couple hits like that, but hopefully that's the end of it. That's the problem with space,
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
filthy. It's full of garbage.
It's full of little rocks.
Yeah.
Like you said in the class, it's like you want to count Pluto as a planet, then count the other 9,000 little rocks in the Kuiper Belt. Those are all planets
That's right.
too.
Good memory.
Yeah. I geek out over space. I probably remembered so much stuff from that class. That class was so fun.
Yeah, I'm so glad
It,
you like
it was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of
Advertisement for NSET 182.
yeah. No, seriously. If there are freshmen listening to this podcast, take that class. It is so fun. It was great. I mean, if you geek out over space stuff like I do, take that class. It was great.
Space, aliens, the meaning of life, all that stuff.
All of it. Yeah. So I guess is Jimmy Webb is Jimmy Webb going to be able to possibly look for that mystery supposed planet, Planet 9 or whatever they're calling it, Planet X?
That's a good question. I don't think I've thought of it in those terms. Yeah, I guess any large enough telescope could help you out with that. I mean, it's particularly attuned to the infrared part of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Oh, okay.
And so, like there'd be a small amount of heat. That's what infrared is, coming off a planet. But, the farther you get from the sun, the cooler it is. So
That's true.
it's probably
Yeah.
not the best approach. Plus, the thing would be so small, and trying to figure out how its gravitational influence on the other planets would dictate its current position. That's been kind of a challenge. There's some work out there saying, hey, these planets, these asteroids, these Kuiper Belt objects are being deflected in a certain way, and there should be something vaguely planet-sized there-ish, but there-ish is still a big chunk of real estate out in outer space.
Yeah.
So you really need to do a lot of sky scanning for that, and not a whole lot of observatories have that sort of time. So I don't think it's a big priority.
Yeah.
Just if there's any planetary astronomers listening, they're probably impotently shaking their fists at me right now.
How dare you?
Yeah, but I think one of the cool things about that is I've seen some ideas floating around where it's maybe like a captured mini black hole, which could have the mass but doesn't have the size
Whoa.
to really be visible, but it still would have that gravitational influence that we'd expect.
But that's a theory that's out there, or that's
But yeah, I mean, depending on how you cook up the universe 13.8 billion years ago, you could form a whole bunch of primordial black holes because the early universe is very dense, and that's how you get that sort of thing. And those are still around today. So, depending on how those knobs were turned in the early universe, how you set it up, there could be a couple of strays wandering around.
That would be, so that's technically be a black hole orbiting our sun.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Now, but would that be what's flinging rocks? Because wouldn't they suck them in?
Yeah, I mean, gravity is actually kind of a tricky force, because if things are static in space and you have, let's say, like two objects, you could describe the force of gravity mathematically really easily, and you could predict what happens, right? They come together.
Yeah.
But once you start having objects that move, they have something that's called angular momentum, and how that works in relation to gravity can be a little tricky. And then when you start to have multiple objects all acting on each other, it's just kind of a
I wasn't
hot
even thinking
mess.
about that, because if they're all moving, then
Yeah.
it could still pull it, but it wouldn't necessarily, because they're all and they're moving fast
Yeah.
too, probably. Okay, I didn't even think about that. So that's okay. That would be crazy, because that would be so cool if it is a planet that's out there. Like, whoa, how many people can, like, I mean, I guess there are decent people, but like, oh, there was a planet discovered, like, in my lifetime. Like,
Yeah.
I guess
yeah.
kind of that would happen with like.
Most of us have had planets taken away in our life.
Yeah, they took Pluto away from us.
Only
How could
Americans
they?
care that much about it.
Yeah, no one else cares. I don't even think that I care that much. It's just like, okay, we lost one, I guess, or we.
I mean, it's still there. It's not a set of keys.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. We didn't it didn't fall through the grate outside on the street and can't get it back.
Yeah.
It's still out there.
Pluto, my old cell phone charger. I can't find it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so crazy. That would be crazy if it was a black hole. Does that have any dangerous implications for us, or is it just kind of? It's just. I guess
Nah.
we would have seen it already.
If it
'cause-
was a planet-sized agglomeration of rock, or if it was a planet-sized accumulation of puppies, or a planet-sized black hole, or a planet-sized anything, it would have the same mass and have the same net gravitational effect.
Right.
Black holes aren't vacuums. They don't suck things in. They just have
Gotcha.
gravity like
Right.
anything else. But they just tend to be very dense, and their gravitational profile just gets nasty if you get too close.
Right.
So, my general word of advice is just don't get too close, and that's pretty easy to do.
That's a really good piece of advice if you're
Yeah.
going near. Yeah. If it was a conglomeration of puppies, I'm
Mhm.
significantly more interested in this thing that's out there.
Yes.
If it's that makes it significantly more interesting. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that would be crazy.
Hot take right here. Planet X is puppies.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wait till the news gets a hold of that one.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
You heard it here first. I would be significantly more interested in going if it was that.
Oh yeah, it'd be so cute. Like maybe they're all
That'd
in
be
like little
great.
baskets or something, and
Yeah.
you just get like covered in puppies, and they're like wagging their tails,
That'd be
licking your
great.
face. Yeah.
That'd be
It's a dream
awesome.
come true.
And then maybe we could bring some back. We have a lot of puppies here, but we could always use more.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that'd be crazy.
Yeah. The toy marketing rights alone.
Insane.
Think about it. It's like space puppies.
Wait till Elon gets a hold of that one.
Yeah.
We're going.
Oh my goodness.
So we talked about this whenever I was in your class, but what is sort of the thoughts about going to Mars?
I guess it depends on who you talk to. I mean, I'm admittedly cynical about this because I've paid attention through enough presidential administrations now to realize that it's just like new guy comes in, sets a somewhat new direction for our priorities in space, and then NASA budgets get reshuffled, priorities get remade, strategic visions are drawn up, new designs are made, everything looks great, and then something changes, economic conditions.
Okay.
And then new president comes in, new vision. So, we kind of take one step forward, two steps back with all of this. So I think still the plan for Mars is sometime maybe like in the 2030s, by 2050 probably. I know we want to get back to the moon first.
Yeah, what's not to jump topics,
Sure.
but what's up about that? Why do we want to go back?
Well, I mean,
they want to build a city. Don't they want to build a base up there?
yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons that you'd want to go. And it depends on your outlook on things. Like scientifically, there are plenty of valid reasons, right? The
Yeah.
moon is interesting. It's basically leftover Earth mantle from when a Mars-sized object collided with the Earth back in its early
Mhm.
history. So sure, interesting for geologists, right? I've seen cases for various manufacturing being done, because if you think about it, our history economically is like we went through the Industrial Revolution, but it kind of polluted everything and made everyone
Yeah.
super sick, and
Yeah.
so the history of that is like moving that somewhere else, the environment gets better. And what better way
Oh.
to do it than by like moving it completely off world, right?
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That would be kind of dope.
Yep.
If they could figure that out.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, it not without challenge, but you
Oh,
could
of course.
you could bring in asteroids that have good raw materials to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Astronomically, the moon's a good place to be because it doesn't have an atmosphere. Build your telescopes there. You can make them nice and big.
Yep.
You can actually work on them if they break instead of sending them out to the Lagrange points and then having them, get hit by space garbage.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's one good thing. And then, if you take the long view of humanity, it's probably a good idea not to have all of our eggs in one basket and
Yep.
kind of spread ourselves about the solar system.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of a vaguely Muskian and Stephen Hawkingsian view of things.
Yeah.
I remember they both kind of spoke about that.
Mhm.
And that's just good from a risk assessment perspective.
Yeah.
But you can't also ignore the political side of it, which is just like
Who gets
Elon
the
Musk,
moon?
great.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, rule world.
Or even then,
Yeah.
like, who gets the moon?
Yeah.
Who
gets the moon?
Whoever gets to it
Mm-hmm.
first.
Well,
That's tricky.
there's outer space treaties from the 50s that cover this sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
And basically, once you're above 100 kilometers up, it's all kind of like you can't claim it, right? And then there's some, like you can't test nuclear weapons because, this was the 50s and
Yeah.
Cold War and all of that. But it's still an underdeveloped area of policy. I've got some colleagues who are trying to do some foundational work on that, some white papers basically trying to say, hey, this is how you should set up your outer space policy because it hasn't really been updated in 60 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's still, it could be like the next gold rush. You never know.
I guess, like, is Elon going to buy the moon?
I don't know.
And then
we
if-
can't tweet about it anymore. So
And then if he buys the moon, then he will rename it to be like the Death Star. And then he'll build all of his Tesla factories up there at a SpaceX headquarters will go up there then.
Yeah. Or what was the other one where Jeff Bezos was like, yeah, you know what? People want to work on Mars. So what we'll do is, I know it's expensive, but hey, you can pay back your cost of going to Mars by working there on Mars for some period of time. And we'll basically take all of your money and we won't pay you anything, but we'll give you the basic necessities of life to keep your body alive. And everyone's just like, Jesus Christ, that's slavery.
I don't know if you know this, but Jeff Bezos watches this show.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
Jeffrey, we call that indentured servitude.
Yeah.
That's what we call that right there. We call that you work for me, and then you get your trip paid to Mars.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, no, like
that's
sign
a
me
horrible
up.
plan.
Yeah.
That's a horrible plan. I'm not a
It
fan.
really is.
It's funny, like I'm not a fan of like Jeff Bezos, but I can't talk shit about Amazon because I only ordered like 10 things from them last month.
I know. I just picked up a bunch of lab equipment that was shipped from them, so
it's like-
I'm the biggest hypocrite.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Like, can you not like? I think you can not like Bezos and then also like just kind of accept the fact that Amazon has all of us by the throat a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that's just being a person in the 21st century.
Yeah, that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I was in my business law because my professor was like, "Who doesn't like Jeff Bezos?" And like half the class raised their hand. He's like, "Now who ordered Amazon in the last month?" And everyone raised their hands, and he was like, "There you go."
Yeah.
That's kind of how it is. But so that's cool. I didn't even know they were planning on doing that, like putting all the manufacturing on the moon. That's kind of cool.
I mean, I don't think it's really a plan. It's just one of those would be nice sorts of ideas.
Oh, okay,
And
I see.
I kind of
I
just
see.
keep that in my back pocket to be like, hey, this
That
would
would
be
be
good for
cool.
the Earth. Remember the place
Yeah,
that we
it's-
live where there's no other planet like it?
Yeah, it's and actually it's interesting because 'cause the moon's like good real estate because like it's pretty rare
oh,
for us to
yeah.
have a moon like as big as our moon
Yeah,
is.
that's for sure. It has played historically, geologically, biochemically very important roles that have been really useful for the evolution and sustaining of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's great real estate.
And then I guess the idea, I think Elon talked about this, but the idea is like the moon is like the stepping point, like the launch point for like going to other planets. Like you go to the moon first and then you refuel and then so that would be cool.
Yeah.
I think that's not a terrible idea. I mean, I do think like I am personally a fan of like the grabbing asteroids, mining the rare earth metals that are inside them rather than going to XYZ country on Earth and digging them up from inside.
Yeah.
Eventually,
using slave labor for that too.
Yeah, eventually, like, and there's so much more of it out
Yeah.
in space. There's so many asteroids that are gonna swing by our neck of the woods, and we can just, I don't know, because didn't NASA figure out that they can now like change the course of asteroids with like satellites? I guess like you can just kind of push it a little bit.
It basically had a controlled impact that demonstrably changed the orbit of a satellite in a predicted way.
Oh, so
Or,
they
an
just ran
asteroid,
into
sorry.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, that's how you change things in the world, kids. You punch
just-
them in the face.
You just hit it. Yeah, because I'm wondering
Violence
like
is the answer.
how do you mine the rare earth metals from an asteroid that's moving that fast? You have to like Armageddon that thing and like land on it and set up a little mine and then
Yeah, as
jump
long as
off
it's Bruce
again.
Willis.
Well,
Yeah.
he'd be the only guy that we could send
Oh,
to go mine
100%.
the metals. He'd have
Yeah,
to.
you can't train an astronaut to be an oil rig person. It only works the
other way around. Yeah. And he would have to lead the team, so he better be around for a long time, or we need another Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
I don't think there will be another Bruce Willis.
No, it's up
I
there
doubt
with,
it.
like Chuck Norris and Bo Jackson and all the
And Tom Cruise probably. I don't
Yeah.
think we're gonna get another
well,
Tom
he'll
Cruise.
run really fast and look really intense while doing it.
Yeah. Well, he could. I love the way he runs.
Do I breathe out of my mouth? Probably not.
Probably not. He does run with like the straightest back I've ever seen. It's
Yeah.
Like, I want to get the breakdown of aerodynamics, but he looks really fast when he's doing it.
Yeah.
So I can't really
L.
complain.
Ron Hubbard be praised.
Exactly. Did you see Top Gun Maverick?
No, because I tend not to watch things that I'm just like, this is a blatant cash grab from my childhood. So it's like,
Oh, really?
yeah.
I loved it.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was great. I thought it was like legitimately just like I don't know. I don't think it was a cash grab. I thought they made it actually a legitimately good story.
Oh, all right. Well, I stand corrected then.
That's from my perspective though.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was a great movie, but I also get a little bit of like a geek for like the film side of it. Like the crew trained to fly the planes. There was a lot of like practical effects that were done. So I thought it was great. I do recommend watching it. It was very good.
All right. I'll have to add that to my list.
But he's like one of a kind. Like I don't think there will be another Tom Cruise out there.
I don't know if that's bad or if that's good.
You know, the Scientology stuff's kind of funny. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
goofy a little bit, but like he does all of his own stunts.
Mhm.
He
Yeah, I like Minority Report. I
As
think that's the
kinda-
last thing
he-
because that was like 20 years ago now.
he's kind of stuck with like, even though you could say like, I don't. Maybe this is the wrong way of looking at it, but in my eyes, he hasn't really like sold out for like franchises, other than like Mission Impossible is one for sure that he's kind of stuck with.
Mhm.
But other than that, I feel like the work that he does is like, it's pretty legit. And like he does a lot of his own stunts. Like he commits, I think. Like he commits a lot more than like other actors do in Hollywood.
Wow. I had no idea you had this passion for Tom Cruise. And
Well,
stuff. I feel like if we go to your room right now, there's going to be like some kind of
Zero.
yeah. No, are you sure there's not
Zero
going to be an
Top Gun.
altar set up with the I don't
No.
know, like pictures with little like
No.
you with him with a little heart?
No, maybe
No?
not.
All right.
No, but I do appreciate. I think just because that movie made me appreciate just like the work, because
Mhm.
it was so good. But we
Yeah, I'm not the person to
We
talk
went
about any
way
movie
off.
that's been out for like in the last 20
the
years.
last 20
or
years,
so.
yeah,
Yeah.
not even if it was like have you kept up with Star Wars at all?
Oh, absolutely not. I'm just, I love the original 3 movies when I was a kid because they did the special edition around that time when I
Mhm.
was younger, and miserable CGI aside,
Yeah,
it's just like a thing you enjoy as a kid.
I still enjoy.
And then
those
it's the same thing with all those Marvel movies. It's just like it's too much of an investment. It's like I gotta go to work in the morning. I can't watch
Yeah.
12 movies and spend all the money that.
It's more than 12 at this point.
Oh my god, yeah, and all the TV shows and
that's my biggest
webisodes
problem.
and everything else. I'm just like I can't get invested in all of this, so I'm just gonna tap out
Yeah,
right now.
that's me with like he wants me to watch like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and I'm like I want to,
yeah.
but there's so many episodes I'd have to get through. At this point, I'm only committed to keeping up with Star Wars. That's my only. I haven't watched any of the Marvel shows since Loki.
Yeah.
I haven't watched
like,
any of them.
Before taking on anything like that, any media, whether it's like TV, movies, or even like social media, TikTok, it's just like
Yeah.
just stop and ask yourself, like, will this increase the enjoyment of my life? And if the answer is no, then just like
Yeah, probably.
just say no.
See, I say that I don't want to commit to a TV show, but I will, without question, put on a 3-hour podcast and listen to the whole. But I can do other things while I'm.
Yeah.
I can I'm doing the dishes, put on a podcast in
Right.
the background. Like, I can't really do that with a TV show. But at this point, Star Wars is the only thing that I'm, at this point, attempting to stay caught up with.
Mhm.
It's the only one. And the new show Andor, so far, is pretty solid.
I've heard some good things about there's a show on Amazon that's supposed to be pretty accurate. It's based on a book series, The Expanse. Have you heard about this one?
I
Because
think I've
it's
seen it.
very much akin to what we're talking about, where it's like the first steps of colonization in the solar system. So there's a lot of politics and economics and all sorts of fun stuff like that related to it. So, I mean, that's something I hear good things about, but I couldn't give you my endorsement because.
I don't even think I have Amazon Prime. I don't.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we should also, another thing we should be thankful to Lord Bezos about.
Yeah, Amazon Prime. Yeah, and they made that. A
message from our sponsor.
they made the new Lord of the Rings show, which was apparently people were sort of like 50-50 about it. It looked beautiful. I think it was the money per episode was it was a stupid amount of money I think it was the most expensive TV show that's ever been made.
Sure.
So it looked really. I'm curious because it was like a ridiculous. Because whenever Marvel started making their shows, they were like, "Yo, a $25 million budget per episode." I was like, "That's a lot of money for one episode." And then Jeffrey was like, "Well, let me do you one better, because I'll make Rings of Power." And the money per episode was crazy.
Gosh, yeah. The equivalent shows in that sort of genre when I was growing up was like Star Trek: The Next Generation and like Babylon 5.
Yeah, yeah.
And all you could like see the strings on the models and like none of the punches connected. It was
60 million per episode. That's crazy. But it
it's not my money.
It at least paid off on like the CGI side because the show I didn't actually watch it, but I like the trailers. Like it looks really good. But yeah, I can't. The commitment to the TV shows. And now Star Wars is like rolling out. They're rolling out like 6 new shows this year, something crazy. And I just can't. I can't.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if people like it and you get a sense of enjoyment and life satisfaction, then like 100%, be all in.
And the guys that are making the shows now are the perfect people because they were. I think the guys that are currently making it were not originally in it. They were like, we actually grew up as fans. And
isn't The Mandalorian like made by Jon Favreau?
Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni did not work on Mandalorian. I don't think.
Okay, well, it's just so funny to me because I still know Jon Favreau from like Swingers in 1996. And like the director of Elf.
And like from Chef.
Yeah,
and he's the guy from Iron Man too. Yeah, he's everywhere. But like they're making those new shows and they actually know what Star Wars fans want. Yeah, I think. So and Andor so far has been very good. I think I'm terribly behind in it though. I think we're like 2 or 3.
Maybe like 2,
1 or 2. Okay, so maybe not that bad, but so that was something. But so like I the problem is I was like I want to talk to Dr. Mel about all these things, and then I was like, oh, I should maybe bring the articles that I saw these things in, and then
thanks for preparing.
But I saw an article from the James Webb Telescope that said that this might be completely wrong, but here it goes. They said that when they looked at like the light that the telescope was picking up when they were trying to look back in time to like look for like the beginning of the Big Bang. Yeah. They found that light that was really old. They found it everywhere. Like they didn't find it in one point of origin like you'd sort of imagine in your head. Like they found it originating from like all around it.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about the cosmic microwave background, which is a little different, or is this James Webb specifically?
I think it was from James Webb. I think that's what they said. It like picked up really old light.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really concentrated in one area. It was sort of all around it.
Right. Well, I mean, that's kind of to be expected because if you think about the universe, it started from a very unimaginably hot and small, dense state 13.8 billion years ago and expanded uniformly in all directions. And oftentimes we think it's expanding into something, but it isn't.
Right.
Like geometrically and topologically speaking, it's just expanding. And I think the easiest way to think about it is If you compress the universe into 2 dimensions, but laid those 2 dimensions instead of like a flat piece of paper, like lay it on the surface of a balloon and inflate
Mhm.
that balloon, everything expands in all directions uniformly.
Yes.
Right? It's just that there's this higher dimensional pretend space that it's expanding into that has nothing to do with the actual universe of 2 dimensions. Right?
Yeah.
So if you instead think of the universe as being a 2-dimensional surface of some kind, but rather the 3 spatial dimensions plus 1 time dimension that we live
Mhm.
in, everything since the Big Bang has expanded out in all directions. And so light from something, let's just not think about what that something could be yet, but light that was emitted from something happening in all directions can still travel towards us. And so you could pick up a signal like that, some light
Yeah.
from all directions, right? So the cosmic microwave background is the afterglow of the Big Bang, which we see in all directions, and its particular pattern of what we call isotropy, how sometimes the temperature of this radiation changes point to point in space, tells us a lot about how our universe was formed and why it looks like it does today. But related to that, since that was very close to the beginning of the universe, only 400,000 years after the Big Bang, we're talking about stars have not existed yet. There's still just a lot of atoms floating around in space. Eventually, denser regions of space that have more atoms come together, collapse down due to gravity, form stars. Stars are around each other, form galaxies, etc. Now, that forming of stars produces light because stars are hot.
Yep.
And then since that's happening vaguely at the same time all around, again, early on, this is about 400 million years after the Big Bang, that light starts traveling through space. And by the time it gets to us, it's kind of been stretched out as the universe is stretched out and appears to come from all directions because it all kind of happened around the same time, right?
Oh, okay, I see. Okay. Because I think like what the article was trying to insinuate was that like the Big Bang was like multiple points of origin.
Oh,
It wasn't like one particular point. It was like it could have been multiple like
yeah. I mean,
sort of explosions.
so the multiple formation sites of this very stretched out long wavelength light, if we're talking about it coming from the formation of the first stars, there's some interesting information there. If you only see it at certain parts of the sky, that means that stars formed uniformly throughout the universe's early history. But if you see it all over, then that means like I said before, it's stars all formed around that same period. But after what we call the Dark Ages, before there were no stars, and well after the cosmic microwave background. So if this article that you're looking at says, hey, it was from all over, that's comforting to me because it just shows us that the universe is generally uniform and has been
Yeah.
on the largest scales and for the longest time.
So I was looking at it's like with the James Webb Telescope. We're bouncing around here. I'm sorry, folks, but this is how it goes. Those pictures that they've released, like they are color adjusting those, right?
Yeah.
Some of the ones that they've shown. Okay, I was gonna say so that's what it would look like if we could see different types of light.
Yeah, most of those pictures, they have a mixture of optical light that we can see, with infrared light, which is light that we can't see, but it's got to be colored to a wavelength that we do see. So often that's usually like the red or pink tones that you see in those pictures, because obviously like our eyes just can't. And sometimes this is a big field. It's called multi-messenger astronomy, which is just use as many wavelengths as you can. Sometimes you'll see images that map X-rays and gamma rays and visible light, maybe even UV light, some infrared, even some radio data. So if you had attached to your head radio dishes, infrared detectors, your eyes, UV cameras, then like maybe it would look something like that.
Whoa.
But it's just, we have to color these images in ways that we can see. So maybe like like one of those crazy like mantis shrimp that can see in like
Yeah.
a billion different colors. Like maybe they would be the perfect astronomers, right? They're
yeah,
just
we need to get on that.
yeah, they're just busy like punching their prey into submission.
Yeah, they're busy surviving.
Yeah.
I guess
Aren't we all?
we are. So okay, so then what I'm hearing is that Elon could make a helmet
Mm-hmm.
that could have all of these things in it, and then the Neuralink chip could connect to the helmet, and then we could see
Yes.
the universe as it really was.
That's all right. You need like a Johnny Mnemonic type character.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy. So in the class that you teach that I was a part of, we spent the semester talking about like the foundations and then finishing with the Fermi paradox.
Mm-hmm.
What is your Fermi paradox number?
The Drake equation.
Yeah,
number?
the Drake. What is your Drake equation number?
Gosh.
I don't remember what mine was.
Well,
I
do you
think-
remember what your resolution to the Fermi paradox was?
Well, my solution to
Yeah.
it, I guess. Oh, I think mine was that I think that there is life in the universe, but the universe is so big and the time frame of civilizations is so small that the overlap is like
Right. So that's
it's so difficult to actually get those two things to line up with each other so we could see where the aliens are.
Yeah. So they could be civilizations could be common in space, but
Yes.
not in time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that solution. That's one of my favorites, and that kind of plays out with the estimates that I've seen and some of the work that is going into that now. And that's just it stands to reason because in our galaxy alone, there's hundreds of billions of stars. We've detected some 5,000 extrasolar planets, which is, if you extrapolate over the size of the galaxy, that's trillions of worlds.
Yeah.
And even if a tiny fraction of those could be habitable to life, and even if a tiny fraction of those do get life that becomes intelligent in some way, there should be like upwards of like thousands or even millions of civilizations.
Yeah.
Right. But the galaxy has existed for literally billions of years, over 10 billion years. Our planet only got its start about 4.5-5 billion years ago.
Yeah.
And, it took all this time to evolve us sloppy meat creatures.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right now that we're looking, and we've only looked just off and on for, less than like 70 years. It's like we're talking about civilizations that may not overlap in time. And, if we continue some of our more negative behaviors, like destroying the planet and in all likelihood ourselves too, we're not going to be around for much longer. And then, we're not going to detect anyone else in our short mayfly-like time span that we have.
Yeah.
So your solution in class was really great because, it pulled on all of those threads and wove them together in something that made sense in terms of the actual Fermi paradox and, in view of what we know of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I've been drawn to the sustainability solution, which, after being a part of a search for techno-signatures, really got me thinking about. And the sustainability solution is basically like an intelligent, long-lived civilization knows that it can't expand exponentially either through its population or its energy use or its resource demands, because even if you start leaving the planet and start to colonize, you can't colonize fast enough to ever keep up with those demands, right?
Oh, so like you're not going to be able to, like your population growth cannot match
or energy use or anything else,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's at some point you hit what you call a light cage limit, which just means like you would have to be traveling faster than the speed of light to get the resources that your growth rate demands.
Okay, right.
So every time I see in the news, it's like, oh, the growth rate is down. We need more growth, economic growth. I'm just like, can't do it forever, folks.
Can't do it. No.
But I think a sufficiently intelligent civilization would know this, and to ensure that they stick around for a while, they achieve some sort of sustainability. What that looks like could be different for whatever initial conditions they're left with. Like, we have an Earth. It has an Earth size and an Earth amount of resources, and that's going to look different from us than, maybe a planet that's bigger or smaller or hotter or colder, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. But that there's a limit. You can't grow exponentially in some capacity for forever. So the civilizations that know this, they stick around, but they're not detectable by our technology. Our technology, telescopes, spectrographs, that sort of thing, can only look for very loud, obvious technosignatures. So these are things like Dyson swarms, like evidence that a civilization is using energy on order of an entire planet or an entire star, or something that would produce waste heat or other light signatures that we could detect over the unimaginably vast distances of space. Right? So we can look for the hot mess civilizations that could potentially exist for a short period of time, but they have to burn themselves out eventually.
Yeah.
And that burnout period is so short compared to the time scale of evolution in a cosmic sense that, I don't think we would have any chance of seeing them or overlapping in time.
Yeah.
And, I was a part of a search for Dyson swarms, both in our galaxy, and a Dyson swarm is basically if you constructed a whole ton of solar panels around a star to collect as much free energy as you could, and
really big.
Yeah, once you're operating on that scale of energy use, like that's the only game in town, basically.
Yeah.
But we didn't see any of those in our galaxy, and there weren't any in any other galaxy out to many millions of light years, millions of trillions of miles. So for me, this was a very chilling conclusion that seemed to indicate that the path that we're on, which prioritizes economic growth and energy use through however we use it, ad infinitum, like there is a dangerous endpoint to all of that, and it doesn't end with a Dyson swarm. It doesn't end with a Kardashev type 1 or type 2, 3 civilization, something Star Warsian.
Yeah.
Right? It ends with with some sort of awful, untimely demise.
Yeah.
And that's the show, folks.
That's it. Thank you for watching Not Just Politics podcast.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, because didn't Drake say that a civilization with the sufficient resources could conquer a galaxy in like 50 million years or something like that? Didn't he? That was like the theorized thing, but was he taking into account the sustainability thing? Like, is that...
No, I think what's interesting is early SETI 50s, 60s. Think about what time you're embedded in, and that was a time of post-war intense economic growth and
so he was
America
just like...
industry. But I just think you don't question that unless like the environmental movement didn't happen until like 10, 20 years later. No one really thought about the consequences of your actions.
No.
And you don't until you're presented with them.
Yes.
Right? So his argument is still sound. Like a civilization that wants to conquer a whole galaxy could do so in 100 million years or so. But that's if, it is possible to do so. And the fact that we haven't been run over by civilizations a dozen times or more means that there might be some issue there, which could have to do with sustainability, right? That argument.
Yeah.
Or even something simpler like it actually is a lot harder to race across the galaxy than we think, right? Like if you travel at sublight distances, which you have to, it still takes hundreds of years to get from star to star.
Yep.
And even if you're at sublight distances, like if you try to push it as fast as you can, like 10, 20% the speed of light, relativity does some nasty things to you. And if you run into like a speck of dust or a piece of rock, that punch gets amplified by the mathematics of relativity. Yeah. And it could easily destroy your ship. So the only real way to go through the galaxy is to go low and slow. And, that could extend that time scale of colonization well longer, and perhaps partly explain why we haven't seen anything, because just you can't do it very quickly at all.
Once we get into the ballpark of like, it could do it in 50 million years, my brain just doesn't... Sorry, folks. I don't know what's going on with me. I didn't bring water. I should have brought water. But once we get into that time frame of 50 to 100 million years, my brain just shuts off. Like, I can't even comprehend that much time. That's such a long amount of time on one goal, like of conquering a galaxy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and to ensure cultural homogeneity during that time is
It's
pretty
impossible.
right?
That's absolutely impossible.
That's actually one of the other solutions to the Fermi paradox is if there's no cultural homogeneity, which there really shouldn't be, because if you communicate with electromagnetic signals, the only way really to communicate, that's years between signals, any colonization front would immediately fragment into separate cultures that are distinct, and any one of them could lose interest at some point.
Yep.
And between that and how stars naturally mix among themselves as they go around the galaxy, you could easily get these whole voids of colonization that it's not unlikely that we could be in one. So we could actually be surrounded by, colonization fronts of civilizations, but just be stuck in a place where, they've been boxed themselves out for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's very true. So like, by this logic, the Empire in Star Wars just doesn't work.
No, I mean, the get around for them is that they travel faster than light and somehow can communicate instantaneously. So.
Yeah, that was a little bit of George Lucas was using cheat codes when he wrote that one. He was like, now they're going to be able to do all this stuff.
He was relying on Isaac Asimov's Foundation series for a lot of his empire building, which, it relies on the same sorts of things, but it's actually very good.
Yeah.
So that's a recommendation for a book series that's like 70 years old now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also an Apple Plus miniseries, I think. Didn't they turn that into TV also?
Which
Foundation?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
think
don't
so.
keep up with what's on streaming services, but it might be there, maybe. So I guess is there one sort of like with the Drake equation? Is there like an agreed upon? I guess not like an agreed upon solution, but is there like a constant, I guess, like updating of the data? Like, is there a central number that like everyone sort of contributes data towards?
Well, actually, some terms of the Drake equation are really well known, and those have gotten even more refined over time.
Oh yeah, because some of them you can just like get a number for.
Yeah, so I like to say like astronomers have done our jobs, and
the
astronomy turns in the Drake equation we know pretty well. So the Drake equation estimates how many civilizations there should be in the galaxy right now, and you do this by taking a big bucket, filling it with all the stars in the galaxy, and then taking subsets of that bucket, scooping out the stars that don't have planets, scooping out the ones that like don't have planets that would be good, don't have planets that don't have life, and so on, and kind of refining that until all you're left is with, you
take out
stars with planets that have life, that have civilizations that are intelligent. So the first couple of terms in this equation have to do with astronomical things, and those are really well known. All right, so we can guess. We know how many stars there are in the galaxy. We know on average how many planets there are per star. We can make some really good estimates of how many of those planets could be habitable, and James Webb, the Jimmy Webb, will help us out with that.
Yeah, it will.
But then you get to some terms that have to do with some squishier things like biology and chemistry, and by the time you get to sociology, it's just like a whole big like question mark, because then it's like, do civilizations want to do this? Well, like, how do you even get at that? So I've seen some really interesting studies that use advanced numerical methods to kind of compute out likelihoods of the combinations of the squishy terms.
Okay, cool.
So you can kind of get bounds on this problem in terms of, not looking at it in terms of solving the equation for the terms that you're missing, but rather, like solving for the terms that you're missing through your knowledge of the rest of the equation. And it's, it's interesting because there's some things that are just really, really tough to answer. Like the last term, how long does this civilization last?
Yeah.
Gosh, like
you don't even really know. That's what I was gonna say. I remember a lot of stuff from that class, but I don't think I remember all of the variables to the Drake equation.
Yeah, it's fine. There's a
that
lot.
one. I don't think I don't think I remember that stuff. But because I'm just curious, because I guess they're like you take out all of the stars that are too big because they die quickly, and then you take out the stars that are too little because they don't produce enough heat, and then that kind of thing. Yeah, so I was curious because I'm wondering, like, if it's But is that also really like a priority in the astrophysics, community to be looking for a more defined solution to the Drake equation, or are there just bigger fish to fry?
Um, yeah, I would say that based on the work of my colleagues and kind of my own experience with it, we kind of just shove it into like an interesting side project,
Yeah.
right? Like most in astronomy, you get funding for things that are astrophysically interesting and are reasonable problems to solve. Uh, Judging from how I've seen the career trajectories of my colleagues go, it's like I've seen them like get tenure and job security and then put some time into search for extraterrestrial intelligence
Yeah.
and Drake stuff. I will say the field is progressing very fast. It's being taken a lot more seriously than it used to now that we can actually physically look for things like technosignatures and biosignatures.
Yeah.
So, like, one of the reasons the Jimmy Webb exists is because it's going to look for biosignatures on other planets. That was one of its science goals.
What kind of biosignatures are we looking for? Like, is there anything specific that we think might be out there?
Yeah. If you think about what life makes on Earth, life can either breathe in oxygen and put out CO2 or the other way around, right? And there's other things like cow farts, methane, right? And then there's some details with like ozone, and I'm not a biochemist, so I couldn't really tell you more than the basic picture of like look for the molecules that life produces.
Gotcha.
But the challenge then is it's got to be things that life makes and not something that the planet itself naturally makes. Like, we have volcanoes, they produce CO2. We have water vapor already. You can split it up easily into hydrogen and oxygen, and there's ways to produce these chemicals that are geological in nature, other ways that are biological in nature, and the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
So a lot of these chemicals will produce light in infrared, very particular infrared wavelengths. So one of the tasks of a telescope like Jimmy Webb is to kind of like sniff that out. Measure how much light is produced and maybe tell us if there's something interesting going on in the atmospheres of very distant exoplanets.
So you don't think that well, I shouldn't say that. All of the CIA, we've seen UFOs. We don't know what they are. What do you think all these UFO sightings are?
Hilarious.
They are very funny.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, when I was a kid, I loved the X-Files. It was fresh,
yeah.
right? And I loved Unsolved Mysteries when they had the alien abduction stories.
Yeah.
I ate that stuff up, man. I loved it so much. But you also got to remember, like, at that time, 80s and 90s, no cell phones, no ubiquitous cameras.
Nope.
So it's just like you had a couple of like terrible grainy photos and then some, I'm making quotation marks with my hands here, eyewitness accounts of like, I was probed in my butt,
Yeah.
And, but now you don't really hear too much about UFOs and stuff with this age of high quality cameras in our pockets.
Yeah.
And when you do, it's very quickly and easily disproven by like, the military was doing drills with their very fast planes over here, or there was a weather balloon, or that's obviously a cloud,
Yeah.
So, I don't take that stuff seriously because there's just it's a question of basic science. There's no reproducible, verifiable scientific evidence, so you can't do any follow-up observations in a reliable way. It's not science. And there's also kind of like the hilarious part of it, which is like, why would gray space aliens with inexplicably big black eyes like travel thousands of light years to come like stick weird probes into people's bodies? Like,
yeah, that does seem
and do so in a really sloppy
funny.
way.
Yeah,
right? It's just like, go to a farm in Vermont, tractor beam.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I'm thinking like, do you think that the recent UFO sightings are just because I kind of think it's just advanced technology that the government's testing, and then some people see it, so they have to like tell us about it a little bit and say they don't know what it is. Oh, we don't know. But why are all the UFOs only flying around American ships? China hasn't been like, oh, guys, someone flew UFO above our Navy.
Yeah. Well, they don't have the most open communications ecosystem in the world.
They
I'd
don't.
say,
But no other. The UK isn't saying it either. Like no one is saying.
Well, they
like,
had crop circles for a while before
They
someone
did.
was like, "Hey, I was bored." I did this."
yeah, I was just bored. It was.
Yeah.
But I think that stuff is just advanced technology.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole slew of possible explanations for all of this that are reasonable and accurate. You know,
'Cause-
it's like there's optical illusions that have to do with lighting and cloud formations and water vapor and like swamp gas. I remember that being a thing
Yeah,
people talk
yeah.
about. And then like yes, with a budget as enormous as the military's, like of course they're developing something.
They have stuff that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Because some of the sightings they've seen, these aircraft do things that shouldn't be possible. It seems like they
but-
move really far, really fast, and they don't have any visible propulsion systems. And
Well, I mean, there's ways to make that happen depending on your orientation relative to the thing, and if you're going
Oh,
one
that's
way and
true.
it's going the other way, it makes it look extra fast, and there's so many ways to explain this through very traditional optical phenomena that have to do with like the relativity of motion, angle of sunlight, where you think about in cinematography, what do you want to do when you hide wires on actors? Like you shoot the shot from an angle such that the actor hides the wires.
Yeah.
They did this in 2001: A Space Odyssey all the time. They had no green screens or anything. It was all in-camera effects. So you can just do that in real life. Do you want to make a plane look like it has no exhaust? Well, then have the angle such that you don't see the exhaust, or
right.
have the atmospheric conditions set up that it's less obvious one day.
Yeah.
I don't know. What was the phrase here? If extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, right? We've all heard of that in one way or another. And what an extraordinary claim it is that aliens are taking joyrides in our atmosphere for some
Yeah, I don't think they're
unknown
aliens.
purpose, right?
Yeah, I don't think they're aliens.
You need a lot more evidence to convince me than a bunch of grainy cell phone footage or like black box tapes from airplanes and 30 years ago.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think it's just advanced. I remember like I saw a TikTok where they were just showing off like something that everyone was allowed to see, and it was just a drone that could do like the Tesla 0 to 60 thing like really fast. And I'm thinking, if this is what they're just allowed to show us on TikTok, there's another version of that drone that's way faster, and it's probably way smaller, or it can just do a bunch of crazy stuff. So I don't think they're aliens or hopping around Earth.
I remember, this was a couple years ago now, but I heard the military was like, "Hey, we don't need this this space telescope we have anymore for spying. Do you guys over at NASA want it?" And everyone was like, "What space telescope?" They're like, "Oh yeah, we have space telescopes. It's cool."
Of course they do.
Yeah, and it's like, and you look at, they gave the specs, and it's actually like it's really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just wasn't designed for astronomy, right? It's designed to point down at Earth instead of up into space.
And
So it
zoom
turns out
in.
they couldn't use it. But it's also similar to another story where it's like, Hubble went up into space back in like 1989, 1990 or something, and the scientists wanted to know if it deployed successfully. It had a cover on the mirror that had to go down.
Yeah.
And they're like, how are we going to know if this works? And over in the military, they're like, we got eyes on it. Don't worry. All right. Great. Thanks.
And they don't know about the two of them. Don't know. That's bureaucracy for you. You're just like, oh, you guys have this thing since when?
Well,
I have no idea.
You bring up a great point, because it's, it's central to all these things. And it was central to the X-Files, too, the show that I love more than anything growing up. It's like, there's a vast government conspiracy. Oh, my God, everyone's in on it. And that's the only way that we can cover this up. And, like, wake up, sheeple. It's like, have you met our government? Have you tried like working in any organization and like sharing information between departments?
Yeah.
It's insane. We do not communicate well at all between any level of organization anywhere at any time, much less in a government
In the biggest
operation.
organization
Yeah.
of them all.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm generally
Like,
of
have
the...
you been to the DMV?
yeah. Yeah, I'm generally in the school of thought that the government's not really good at doing things in general because they don't know how to communicate with each other. They don't know how to
Yeah.
They don't even know what's going on in the department right across the street from them.
Yeah.
That is so funny. You guys want this space telescope that we have? That's so funny. They were like, did it deploy or not? We got eyes on it. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. That is so funny. We got eyes on it. The military, we're spying on ourselves. They were like, we're going to spy on NASA and we're not going to tell them. Because if we do, they might be okay with it. And we can't have that. That's to remain a secret. That is great. Oh, man. Yeah, that's what it is. I think I can't get over that. That's so funny. Did they do that with Jimmy Webb?
No, I mean, Jimmy Webb's out at the Lagrange point. One of the Lagrange points, it's like 150 million miles away or something. So
It's already that. It's going fast, I guess. And it's been going fast for...
Yeah, I mean, it took a little bit to get there and had to deploy once it was there. You know, you got to do that because it's an infrared telescope and the Earth is warm, which gives off infrared light. So you kind of got to get it away.
Oh, so that's how far away you'd have to go?
Yeah.
Holy cow. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the thing's got to be cooled down to really close to absolute zero. It's like, gosh, I'm trying to think. When I used to use big optical telescopes, we had a thing called a dewar attached to the CCD camera, which made it really cold, and we had to use liquid nitrogen. But with infrared, your electronics has to be super cold because any movement, stray movement of electrons, any thermal jiggles will produce infrared radiation. So
Yeah.
it's got to be even colder than that, and it's got to be like, degrees above absolute zero. So, go out into space, put up a sun shield, and then try to get away as much as you can from Earth. And, the
Gotcha.
Lagrange point is a stable-ish place where the gravitational influences of Earth, Moon, Sun kind of cancel each other out.
oh,
right?
okay.
So that's you
Gotcha.
can kind of park it there, and it'll just kind of orbit around the sun, and it's the best case scenario for it. Besides getting hit by a chunk of rock that one time.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't even...
Yeah.
This
So
thing
if the
is...
thing breaks,
it's orbiting.
you can't do anything about it. At least with the Hubble, they sent up a couple of servicing missions to replace some of the technology and the instruments because it was in low Earth orbit. You could do it.
Gotcha, yeah.
But
Jimmy's too far away.
yeah, Jimmy too far.
Oh, I don't know why I thought this. This might be really dumb, but I thought that Jimmy was one of the ones that we just send out in a direction and it just keeps going.
Like a Voyager probe? That's what
yeah.
Yeah, no.
I didn't realize that it was orbiting.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's...
Well, I mean,
What a goof moment.
it doesn't really matter for the sake of this, right? It's just
No.
it's just too far to
Yeah, either way, it's
do anything.
too far
Yeah.
away for you to do anything. Wow.
Yeah.
So they had to send it out really... So what's it called? It's called a Lagrange point?
Lagrange.
Lagrange point? So then you just send it out.
I think Lagrange point
point
was
is-
like 1991.
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
Like that was like an Alice in Chains album.
Yeah, it was in Seattle. That's where
Yeah.
it was happening. So they got to send it really far, and I guess you can't repair it. That's interesting. And it's in a really... So you said it's so far away that all the gravitational points just kind of cancel each other out, so it can just...
Yeah, that's the general
Okay.
idea. I mean, there's a couple of different points that have to do with the complex gravitational fields from all these objects, and some of them are stable, some of them are not. Honestly, I can't remember which kind Jimmy is in. Yeah, I mean, I have to look it up. It's just, for the sake of this discussion, it's just stupid far.
I think that's a sufficient measure of distance.
Yeah, stupid far.
Stupid, yeah, we can definitely
Yeah.
classify that as how far away it is. There's a lot of things that are pretty stupid far away.
Yeah.
Jimmy is now in that
I teach a whole
category.
class about things that are stupid far away.
You do,
Yeah.
and it's a great class.
Thank you.
You do. You teach. That is a good point. In a way, that's your entire profession.
things that are stupid far.
Yeah, and if you think about it, in a way,
Yeah.
looking at things that are stupid far away.
Hmm.
I like that.
Yeah. Does that make like biologists? Are they looking at things that are stupid close?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm a chemist. I look at things that are stupid close.
Or stupid small,
Stupid
I guess.
small.
Yeah, that's true, because they are really close. Well, speaking of which, that was like, here we go off on another thing, but like things that are stupid small, they dropped the trailer for like the new Ant-Man movie, and there's like a whole universe in the quantum realm. And, like when you go really small, there's like multiple species of people, and there's like spaceships, and they got like a whole thing going on down there.
Oh. I think that was like a Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode. Too.
Here come the Simpsons,
Yeah.
single-handedly predicting the entirety of human history.
Yeah.
I think that guy might be a time traveler.
Who? Paul Rudd?
No, the guy that made the Simpsons.
Oh. Yeah.
I think
I
I think
guess.
if it's anybody, it's him.
Yeah. Well, it's also like a monkeys on typewriters sort of thing. It's like you do a show long enough, it's gonna.
You think so?
I guess. I mean.
I feel like he's just been too correct too
Yeah.
many times.
Well, I mean, the show's been on for like 30 years now.
That is
It
true.
would get a couple of things right.
That's true.
I mean, I used to like Parks and Rec. When that was on, and I feel like it got a lot right. Where it's like if I watch it now, I know we're not supposed to talk about politics today, but
No, we can. It's not that we're not supposed to. We can.
okay.
Yeah.
It's just like when I watched that show today, back then, all these things were played for laughs. Like, oh my goodness, how ridiculous and extreme this all is, and now it's just like, oh, this seems pretty tame in comparison to where we are now.
Yeah. I definitely agree.
Yeah.
That's how it was. But yeah, now I wonder if that's possible. Are there tiny human beings, like really small?
No.
You don't think so? Oh man, they debunked that one pretty quick.
I've not seen the Ant-Man films, or I'm not even all that sure about the premise. Besides, he's able to shrink himself somehow while preserving the relative sizes of his own. Parts.
He gets denser and stronger as he shrinks.
Well, if he shrinks that small, he's gonna be a black hole. So
Wow, yeah, I mean, because I mean, like tardigrades are like huge in the trail. Like the tardigrades are like these massive. I would love to see one of those from that scale. If that was like, that's on my bucket list, I think.
Yeah.
Get that small so that I can see a giant tardigrade just floating.
I mean, the problem with when you get down to the quantum level, everything is more probabilistic than deterministic, and you can't create something as complex as a living being on those rules. Like the great Erwin Schrödinger, one of the pioneer quantum physicists of the early 20th century, he had a series of lectures in Dublin that were pioneering because he was predicting a lot of things about how life and DNA was set up that became true about like 10, 20 years later. And so he was like, why is life the size that it is? And well, on the scale of the quantum of subatomic particles, like the rules are very weird and different and probabilistic. And to create something as organized as life, you need to have at least this many orders of magnitude larger to wash out that weirdness.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no way that you can have anything resembling civilizations of people on something that small of a scale. Like in order to have brains that work the way that ours do, they need to be large enough to override that quantum randomness and weirdness that would prevent orderly function.
I'm crushed. I thought all of it was real.
Yeah. Sorry. What other Marvel movies can we ruin today?
I thought it was all real.
I'll save you all like $15 a ticket or however much.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Schrodinger's got that. Did his cat ever make it out of the box?
Yeah. The story behind that though is the Schrodinger's cat story was it was a thought experiment to help disprove how ridiculous quantum mechanics sound.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, okay, I've got this particle that exists in a superposition of states, which means that it's not purely this way or purely that way. It's a probabilistic wave of possibility until something happens and it collapses down to a certainty.
Yeah. Until it's observed, basically.
Yeah. And then whether that goes one way or another, like a vial of poison is broken and a cat in a box dies because, oh my goodness, people were horrific back in the day.
Yeah, that was the thought experiment.
That was considered just fine. You know, no
I guess.
animal cruelty or whatever. So people were like, "Oh, well, this is ridiculous because the cat can't be in a superposition of states that the particle is." And it's like, well, no, something happens to the particle. It is influenced by something, whether it's another particle or a photon of light or something else that exists in the universe, because there's lots of those. Particle collapses to something, and then cat either lives or dies. It's not independent of the observation. It's just particles got some things going on.
That's how it is.
All particles everywhere exist as a probabilistic froth until they interact with all the other particles interacting with all the others, and then here we are.
Yeah, and that's why when when you get really small, things get kind of squirrely like that, just because you don't really know.
Yeah, and it's not just crazy. Like you don't know, it's just that is how it is. That's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, I guess that's what I meant to say.
Like the atom of existence is not like a actual particle of any kind. It's the nature of probability and math itself. It's kind of weird.
Did you celebrate Mold Day this year?
No, I mean I like the idea of all those math number related
holidays. It's my cousin sent me a picture. It was like Happy Mold Day. He has a shirt. I think he's a chem major, and he was like Happy Mold Day. I was like, I appreciate that. That's cool. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And then you could have one for you can. I was trying to think of the other ones that you could have a holiday for, like Planck's constant, but I think that's 10 to the 34th.
Yeah.
10 to the negative 34th.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, it's don't have that many days in a month.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, you got to start picking the digits, and when it's not obvious, like with Pi Day, it's hard. It's a hard sell.
Yeah, that is very true. That is a hard sell. Yeah. But they did it somehow.
We could do like the well, the fine structure constant is really important. It actually has a lot of other constants built into it.
And what's that one?
It's one of the things that pops out when you start smushing physics together from different branches, and it's one of those things that it's like, this is really important, and why is it this particular value? We don't actually know, but if it was any different, nothing would work the way that it does.
Oh, and what is that value?
So it's basically like it's an equalizer setting between the electromagnetic forces and gravity and the strong force, another force that works in the universe.
Yeah.
Because there's only 4 basic forces.
Yes.
This is one of those things that's like, in this universe, it just happens to take on the equalizer settings, take on this value. And so here we are. So it's about 1 over 137.
There's the...
So you could probably swing that as, whatever the fraction is, I forget. But you could probably turn that into a holiday if you wanted to.
You could try that. Now that's a hard sell. That's crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're really invested in it, that's how you find your best friends in the world, right? You'd be like, "Hello, fellow nerds."
That's very true.
Let us celebrate the coupling constant of the of this boson to this Higgs field, and yeah,
and then no one shows up, and then you're just kind of sad, I guess.
Yeah. That would be how it would work if I did that.
Maybe at Point Park.
You'd have like that. Yeah. You'd have the pointy hat and the noisemaker.
Oh, the little thing that rolls out. Yeah.
And it would just have that sad.
where it falls over and flops over somehow.
And you're just staring at like a cupcake with one candle in it.
Yeah. It's you alone in a room.
Yep.
It's you alone in the fishbowl.
And then in the bathroom, like the sign falls down partly.
Yeah. All the wallpaper starts peeling randomly. It's like all sad.
Wow, we should really go into business as like the world's saddest party designers. Wouldn't that be fun?
There's a gap in the market. There might be a gap in the market that we could fill by doing that. Maybe we can ask Jeffrey Bezos to help us out with that. Come on, get us a...
well, yeah, we can make it the... this is the party for people who want to sign up to be indentured servants on Mars. It would have the same number of people.
Oh, man. If he actually does that, that's so crazy. And it's even crazier if people sign up. Like, first of all, you have to be so desperate enough that you want to go to Mars.
Well, this didn't really occur to me until we started talking about it. But, I went to Alaska a couple of years ago, and I learned about the gold rush up in the Yukon, which I never really thought about. Like, I read Jack London a bunch of times, and it was like, it always kind of in the back of my mind, but never really thought about it. And that was after the San Francisco gold rush, which was a similar thing, where it's just like desperate people were like, oh my goodness, here's an opportunity really far away. Like, I got to take it, So it could be, and people don't change over time. Our technology
No,
changes, but people are
but
the same.
is
So
there
you could have the same sort of thing happen just on Mars instead of the Yukon or San Francisco.
But is there gold on Mars? Because the hope was that they'd get rich, right? That was the hope. You find some gold, you make a bunch of money, and you change your family forever. But is there gold on Mars?
I mean,
Like, is there a gold?
I don't know enough about Martian geology to know for sure.
Oh, no, I guess I
but-
mean, like, is there a possibility of, like, what's in it for these people, like, other than just to be in a new? I guess I didn't mean physical gold. I meant, like, the possibility of getting rich. Like, because that's what the
Yeah.
gold rush
Well,
was.
I don't know. Do people? I mean, what is the getting rich of our era? I mean, currently it's
Clout,
like
probably.
hits on whatever social media
Yeah,
platform
it's
of your
clout.
choosing is. Yeah. So
Oh yeah, if you could be the
I'm the
I
first social
immediately-
media influencer on Mars, you guys.
I immediately walk back my statement. All of the TikTokers will be
Yeah.
the ones going to Mars so that they can
I'm
make
slaying
the
it on Mars, besties.
so that they can be the first one to make a TikTok from Mars. Oh my gosh, Mr. Beast will 1000% make the first YouTube video on Mars. And he'll be like, I gave 1,000 Martians a beast burger, whatever, and and then there it is. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. That's yeah, I get it. Like I don't think I'll go. I think I'm okay.
You think you'll stay
Staying-
here? Yeah, I like
Yeah,
having air I can breathe. So it's
I'll.
nice.
I think I'll stick around and try to tackle some of the problems we got here. I think I'm not gonna get in a spaceship.
Yeah.
I'm like, a part of me is like scared of being in a plane,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
Yeah, because you're in a metal box that's heavier than air. I'm like,
yeah.
this shouldn't work.
Except, and then the chances of me getting on a rocket ship,
Mhm.
very small. There would have to be some incredible salesman that would have to convince me to get on that ship.
Yeah. Or what about if someone invented a teleportation machine that worked with the laws of physics, that is quantum mechanics? Did we talk about this in your class where it's like, would you get into this knowing that like you have to die in order to be
Yes, and
rebuilt
then
elsewhere?
are you still you?
Yeah.
If you teleport 1,000 times, well, it's a question of a moving consciousness, I guess.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
project your consciousness into a new body?
Well, it depends what your consciousness is. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're just the sum of, sloppy water meat that's in your
Mhm.
brain, firing electrical chemicals from neurons,
Then
like,
sure, I
if
guess.
all of that stuff transfers over, then you are you.
Then yeah,
But if you have any doubt about that, then you can't go because, what
that's
if,
very true.
it,
Yeah.
and usually when I've seen this, like in science fiction novels, people are like, well, I guess I wasn't anything more than a salty bag of meat in the first place.
I guess, or it's like, what if it's like Spaceballs? What if I pop up and I'm like backwards? What if my torso's facing the other direction by accident? Then I'm in
Yeah.
real trouble.
Yeah, in the first Star Trek movie, there's a horrible transporter accident, and the novelization of it actually made it far, far worse than the movie. But it's
Yeah.
pretty terrible. Like if anything goes wrong, then
You're dead, pretty
yeah.
much, or
Yeah.
effectively. Yeah, that's crazy.
hopefully quickly.
Yeah, so even if there was a teleporter, I don't think I'm gonna go. Now, I would jump in the metaverse if the metaverse could take me to Mars. That I might do.
Mm.
I might go there in VR. But I don't think I'll actually go there as me.
Yeah.
I'm too
I don't know.
scared.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would go either. I mean, I didn't try to become an astronaut. I became an astrophysicist because I didn't want to leave the planet.
Yeah, so you're not gonna go?
No, it's not for me. I mean, there's no other place like the Earth in terms of its geology, its geochemistry, its biology, its
Mhm.
composition. We're evolved to live here and nowhere else, and trying to live anywhere else is, to me, is a fool's errand, because either you get bombarded with radiation, your bones rot, you have to find some crazy workarounds to get air and food, and then you're like drinking Tang like a 60s astronaut the whole time. So
Yeah, that's what they're gonna have to do. They're gonna have to
Yeah.
go full Matt Damon and like grow potatoes on Mars.
Oh,
when
yeah.
they first get there, and dip it and dip it in some Vicodin, crushed
Yeah.
up Vicodin. Yeah.
You know, I remember a couple years ago now, the Apollo 11 command module passed through town. I don't know if you were here when that happened, but you got to see it at the Heinz History Center, and it was
What was
really,
it?
it's great. The Apollo command module. So this is the part of the Apollo ship that brought the astronauts to the moon and back, but it wasn't the lander, which
Oh, it was
had
like a display piece they were bringing.
it was the whole thing. The thing that splashed down
Right.
with the astronauts. Yeah, this is the only part
What
of the
year
ship
was
that
this?
left. This is from 1969.
Oh no, saying like what year did they come to Pittsburgh?
2018?
So I wasn't here at Point
Okay.
Park. I was still. I mean, I was still like relatively close to the city, but I don't think
Yeah.
I was here. I don't think I went to that. No.
Okay. But I mean, that was the coolest thing for a number of reasons.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
One, I didn't know about. They gave the astronauts survival kits in case they splashed down on a uncharted Pacific island. So they gave them like malaria pills, machetes,
Whoa.
and survival kits to be like, hey, like if this happens and you're out in the woods, out in like the tropic,
in the
you know,
jungle
in the jungle, yeah,
with Jack Sparrow on the beach drinking rum.
like go ahead, do that. The other thing, which relates to your point, one of the reasons why I'm like super not into going into space, is like, okay, think about it. They're there for, it took them 3.5 days, 4 days to go to the moon, same number of time back. That was for Apollo 11. They only spent a couple hours on the moon. By the time they got to Apollo 17, they were there for days on the moon.
Mhm.
So multiple days out, multiple days on the moon, multiple days back. No showers. How do you think that place smelled? It smelled like feet. And like all.
That's the selling point. You're like, that's it for me. I'm not.
And the other thing, they had a system where they could pee in a tube and then put that out into space, no problem.
Uh-huh.
But do you have to poop? Here's some bags.
Oh no.
Yeah, and
did
here's
they
a
have
locker where
Febreze?
you can put the bags in, and hopefully.
Did they have Febreze in that locker?
Did
Did they have?
It was the 60s and 70s, so they probably just had like cigarettes and pork chops or something.
Yeah.
Here's a fifth
Smelled
of
like
scotch,
it
guys.
smelled like cigarettes to begin with,
Yeah.
probably.
Well,
and then...
I mean, considering the air was a very high oxygen mixture, you probably don't want to fire in the spaceship. Maybe not cigarettes, but
no.
I don't know.
That seems like a bad idea.
Yeah.
that does seem like a pretty.
It's just
bad
like
idea.
very simple things that you take for granted here are very difficult to do if you want to try to not do them here, but somewhere else.
Yeah, this is a pretty special place
Yeah.
in our neck of the woods in the universe. I think I'm gonna stay.
Yeah, not just because you don't have to poop in bags. I mean, you can
I mean
if you
that.
wanted
I mean
to.
that alone. Yeah, you can sure if
Yeah.
that's what you want to do. I will judge you. I think.
Endorsement from Carson.
I think I
Pooping in
will judge you,
bags.
but
Yep.
you're certainly allowed to do that.
Yep.
All right. We have a couple of questions we like to ask all of our guests.
Okay.
Toward the end here. I think they're kind of fun. So here we go. What was a small act of kindness you were once shown that you will never forget?
Oh my goodness. Well, gosh, I feel like in a life that has many of them, and this is true of everyone, it's hard for me to think of one. But I would say, when I was kind of like in the end of grad school, there's this opportunity came by called Fame Lab, and it was
Mhm.
it was a science communication contest that NASA was putting on, and I was kind of like, oh, I like to do outreach, maybe I could try doing this, but then I was kind of like, oh, I'm too busy. You know how it is when you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, yet another thing, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, as a grad student especially.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then I had like some basic questions about it that I sent the person who was coordinating the thing, and this person was just really, really nice to me, and she actually displayed not just one small act of kindness by, like returning my emails, but when I actually decided to do it and go down there, she was really like helpful and kind to me in so many ways, and making sure that like we could do this program, and that I had everything I need for it. And so when I did this contest, I won it. And then we went on to the world's version of it in the UK, and she went with me. Like we didn't fly in the same flight, but like we got to the same place in the UK, and she made sure that I like had everything I needed. And it was just an unimaginable amount of small acts of kindness that ever since I got to know her, it was just part of her style. So, and this all just started from like just being nice to me in an email when I was just kind of like, I don't know about this thing, if I have time for it, but blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have someone that's kind of there to look out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you never know where it's going to come from, and
you don't.
Yeah. It's like, I really hope in my classroom, I have the chance to do that for others, because it's one of those butterfly effect sorts of things. You just like, you never know what's going to happen. Or, my wife says, she says like education is like planting a seed of a tree whose shade you're not going to enjoy, but other people will.
Oh, wow, that's a great way to think about it. That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's cool.
So don't interpret this as like, I have thrown shade at Carson today.
No. Of course not. Of course not. In a philosophical sense, what are you most afraid of?
Philosophical sense.
Yes.
So what do you mean by philosophy in this context?
I guess, so the original question was, what are you most afraid of? But I had, and not that this is wrong with this, but I people were interpreting it as like needles, heights, spiders.
Gotcha.
And I'm thinking like, what is in your brain that you're sort of like, I do not want this to happen?
Gosh, I'm always worried that, if you follow billions of years of evolution, you get humans, and I'm often wonder if we're just too many mistakes were made in that process, and we're not the right ones to continue the biological magnificence of planet Earth.
Oh, interesting.
Because there's so many things about our brains from our heritage that are suboptimal for this. Like we are all still social apes. We're very similar to chimpanzees and bonobos and like all the other cousins in our lineage, where it's just like we all want to fight for social recognition. We want to be the top ape, right?
Yeah.
And that, when you follow through thousands of years of cultural evolution, you start to understand why we organize things the way that we do, because we're all just social apes grasping for the top of the ladder.
Yeah.
Right? We want the tastiest fruits from the tree.
Yeah.
Right? And that could be thought of as part of our strengths and all the things that we build, but it's also part of our weakness of character, where we're so worried about our social order that we flock to things like social media, and we tend to ignore problems that have larger time scales and implications to them, right? Because we're apes that are wired to see threats in front of our faces, but we're not wired to understand long-term existential threats. So that makes us uniquely terrible at things like climate change.
Yeah.
Or, like placing funding in places that will help with whatever the next pandemic will be. 'Cause we just don't have that ability to think mathematically or existentially in those terms. Think about like when you took math class, like algebra or pre-calc or whatever, like you learn about exponential functions and how they work and how they grow faster and faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
But when you see like, okay, if something doubles every minute for a week, it takes over like the galaxy.
It's
like it
huge.
doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. Our brains can't comprehend it. And I'm telling you, as someone who's spent decades in school studying math and physics. Like, this is just a huge weakness for us. And I wonder, it's like, were we the right ones to be at the top of the food chain at the right time? I'm concerned that our failures as a species will be the failure of Earth's biodiversity in the future.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
See, I like that question because everyone will give you a different answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone will give you something different. That's
So,
really
I mean, I'm
interesting.
worried we're not going to really solve climate change because we just are. It's not in our species mindset and abilities to, and we may
Right.
not solve other pressing issues. We're so focused on things like economic growth because when you have good growth, you're a good boss. You're the highest pecking order of your social strata. And it's, if you just take a long-term view, like, none of those things are sustainable and have some very serious deleterious consequences.
Yeah, we're kind of wired. We're wired towards power and money and status.
Yeah.
It's kind of how we go. I can definitely see that as a valid thing.
So you kind of wonder, it's like, what if, like, Neanderthals were the ones who won out, right? Because we coexisted for a while. We just happened to outcompete them. So, I think I've seen some ideas in the science fiction literature landscape of, like, what would happen if Neanderthals were the species to win,
or the Denisovans were.
Yeah, or like how different the world would be set up with the mindset that they perhaps had. So, I know, sorry, that was a long-winded explanation for your question, but
that's a perfect explanation for the question. Not at the risk of a doubled up answer, what thoughts keep you up at night?
Oh my goodness. Well, that one, I don't know, like being able to support my family, that sort of thing. I always wonder about the Fermi paradox. That always keeps me up at night. There's something deeply disturbing about it. And a paradox usually means that one of the pieces of information that goes into forming the paradox is wrong. And so it's like, which one is it? And you were in the class. You've seen all sorts of interesting twists and turns that discussion can have with, like, we live in a simulation, or,
that there's a civilization that's uploaded their consciousness to, like, the hive mind. So they're not necessarily, like, human anymore.
Or even simple ones like, we are the first, and with all of the responsibility that carries. And again, like, are we up to that challenge?
That's crazy. That's heavy.
Yeah.
That one's heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, my characterization of humans can be a little cynical, and sometimes I think we're a bunch of, like, lemmings staring at our phones while we're running off a cliff. But, like, you can kind of take that in whatever context you want to discuss, and it's just like, are we up for the challenge of being not just a global civilization, but a potentially solar system wide or galactic one? And the fact that I don't see any other civilizations out there, and there should be some, is, like, very disturbing to me.
Yeah, for sure. That would be very interesting if we were the first ones.
Yeah.
That would be.
Yeah.
Because that does put, like, the burden of responsibility is so much heavier if you're the first ones. Do you think if we are the first ones, the fact that we've acknowledged that burden of responsibility makes us, like, better?
Well, I mean, not intrinsically, because just recognizing something and not doing it doesn't mean anything.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep, that's a good point.
Like, you could be the best person in your mind, but if you don't act accordingly, then none of that matters.
That's like the net force for good thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. When do you feel like the best version of yourself? Like a situation that you're in, people you're surrounded by, something that you're doing?
My goodness. I don't know. I mean, it depends on what the end goal is. I mean, as a general human being, I think I'm best when I'm at camp with my family. So my wife, my daughter, my dog. And that's, I'm not going to say that we're like, it's proper camping, like tents and foraging and all that. Like, like we have a camper on a campsite and, like running water and all of that.
Yep.
So it's like, I'm not going to say it's inglamorous or rustic or anything like that. But it does have enough of the Walden-esque deliberate living experience where I think like we're doing it right. We're experiencing nature. My kid's growing up being a kid playing outside.
Yep.
And you get to take a step back and be disconnected from the crazy hive mind of humanity.
Yeah.
If we're talking about like working career-wise stuff, I like to get into my flow state. I'd like to work alone. I like to not be bothered. I like to not have email. I like to never check any social media and just like focus and do it, and then like wake up a couple hours later and be like, whoa. You know?
That's great whenever you hit that.
Yeah.
That flow state, that is pretty good. What did you... This is an impromptu question. What did you learn... Like, what has being a father taught you about life?
It has taught me about the really interesting inconsistency of time scales in our memory. As my daughter's 3 now. She's gonna be 4 this year. And 4 years is not a whole lot of time.
No.
And it's less and less time for you the older you get.
Yes.
But when you're in it, if you think about to the first 4 years of your life, certainly you can't remember at least half of it. But like when you're 3 or 4, when you can really pick up on those memories, it's like, feels like forever. Like between Thanksgiving and Christmas, if you celebrate either of those holidays, like it feels like forever when you're a kid, right? You're just waiting. And then when you grow up, it's like you're desperately trying to order things from Amazon at the last minute because it's just like...
That was me for the last 3 years.
Yeah. So I would say that it's a curious study of timescale and memory and how the latter depends on the former so intimately.
That's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
What does it take to be a good leader, and how can good leaders rise to the top?
Be a good social ape and
Be a good social ape.
Have a loud booming voice in the forest and have a long coat to be groomed. I hate to tell you that I'm like not at all the right person to talk to about this because I've tried to be a leader in the past in various ways. I feel like people see right through me and that I'm just like a socially awkward skinny white guy who just like has no power whatsoever.
What about in the
my
realm
daughter
of science?
just like, not so much. My daughter sees right through me and I tell her to do something, she looks at me and just says no and walks away. So I mean, I couldn't tell you, man. Like I'm sure there's a place for like charisma and some natural power exuding capabilities that people have. The best leaders I've seen are the ones that like make you feel listened to and supported, because I've had some bad bosses and they made you feel like you're just a terrible cog in their machine there to support them and keep them well paid. And the best leaders that I've seen like flip that around and they're like, I'm here to support you. And if people ever listened to me and made me a leader, then that's what I would try to do too.
Who are some of those leaders that made you feel like you were being supported by them?
Oh my goodness. When I used to work in the honors program, the director at the time, Dr. Sarah Matthew, was one of those. She was very supportive. My department chair, who's on sabbatical this semester, Greg Johnson, was one of those. He knew that like, and in fact, he would write this in my evaluations. He'd be like, I know the thing I have to do is just like get out of his way and let him do his work. And I was like, that's all I've ever wanted.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Like, I just don't want to be bothered. I want to do my thing, and like Ron Swanson style, I want to build my very good chair and just be like, someone else can sell the chair, someone else can sit in it. It's a very good chair. I'm here to build a good chair.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
The Ron Swanson approach to leadership.
Yeah.
I haven't actually watched Parks and Rec, but I've just seen the highlight clips, and that's probably my favorite character that
Yeah.
I've seen from just that. He's so funny.
What a beautiful show where it's like I share no political inclinations with him at all, but I'm like, I respect the hell out of him. You know?
Yeah, that's what you do. You take a character that nobody should like, and
Yeah.
you make everybody love him.
Yeah.
That's a really tough thing to do, but whenever you figure it out, it's great.
Mhm.
Do you think there is a meaning to life and to our universe and to our existence?
My goodness. I've thought about this for a long time, and the short answer is connectivity.
Okay.
So let me kind of explain why. If you think about like you,
Mm-hmm.
okay, who are you? What are you made of? So think about it, you may think I am a person. People are made out of organs and cells. Curious that we're living things made of other living things, right?
Yeah.
Like how
that
weird is that?
Weird. Yeah.
And in your brain, like those cells, some of them are neurons. They send electrochemical signals back and forth to keep your thoughts alive. And that's how you can track of who you are, kind of. But then you think about, okay, the cells are made of organelles, which are made of molecules. Molecules are made of atoms. If you've seen one carbon atom, you've seen them all. And in fact, you've been cycling out atoms in your body your whole life. Every time you eat food, you replace certain atoms with others. So you're not at all the same person as you were a couple of years ago, because those are all different atoms and molecules that took the place of previous ones. Right? So it's like, where are you in this process? Right? You're some weird connection of atoms and molecules that have had previous experiences with other atoms and molecules that are somewhere else. It's kind of weird, right? And then
Yeah.
you get down to even further, atoms don't exist as like billiard balls orbiting around other billiard balls, that picture that you always see in elementary school textbooks, right? It's really this weird probabilistic froth of possibility that only collapses down to something concrete when it's measured. And I'm using quotes here. By measured, it just means interacts.
Yeah.
Or has some connection with something else. So on the smallest scale, the universe is these little nuggets of probability, wave-like in nature, that connect with other nuggets of wavy probability to help kind of produce this sloshy wave of reality that we experience on the larger scales.
Yeah.
And if you took any one of these probability waves, these little subatomic particles, as we can describe them in quantum mechanics, in an empty universe, they would exist as nothing because they're just probability waves. They need interaction with something else to become what they are.
Whoa.
So extend that back up the ladder again, from atoms, from particles to atoms to molecules to cells to people. Like, it's all interconnected weaving of some probabilistic nugget of reality.
Whoa.
Right? And so when you start thinking of it in that way, it's like, well, I'm not really just me. I'm influenced by my environment. Like, I'm influenced talking to you. I'm influenced by the molecules I'm exchanging with the air all around me. The environment has some weird genetic influences on me, like epigenetics, something we're just learning about now.
Yeah.
We only started talking about our microbiomes in the last like 10 years or so, which is not something we thought about. So we're weird composites of interactions on a fundamental quantum mechanical level up through like a cellular and biological level and onto a planetary level, right?
Yeah.
Like, so when you think about like, what am I? How do I separate myself from everything else? How do I define myself? You really can't. You only exist like a single molecule does when it interacts with other things. That's why everything is connectivity. Everything is connection. So what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is your connection to everything else in the universe.
That's a crazy way of looking at it. So it's like if there was nothingness and then there was just one person, that person isn't really anything.
Well, the person still exists as the
Well, of
atoms that are
course.
interacting with that person's
Yeah.
self, but
But
then
they
the
don't have
pers-
any connectivity to like what's outside of them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and the flippant answer is, of course, they would die because they're in a vacuum.
Well,
with
of course,
nothing else
yes,
around,
yes, yes.
But I think, like the most fundamental laws of physics are telling us something that you can kind of take with you from an ethical and philosophical perspective, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not just a bucket of flesh. You are like a tapestry of connection that weaves itself through time. And I think that's just a much more beautiful way of looking at
That's
it.
a really beautiful way of
Yeah.
looking at it, because in a way that sort of gives. Well, I think all this stuff has value, but it validates like the value of like everything.
Right.
in
And
a
it goes
way.
back to what you said about like small gestures of kindness,
Mhm.
like that's not something that's easily measured or quantified or even defined, but
Mm-mm.
has some sort of like informational value to it that transcends its like intrinsic small size. Like it cascades in time, and it's not a nugget of life, it's not a living thing, that effect that you have on someone, but it's some sort of impact that keeps going, just as like life, the cells divide and keep going to keep their genetic material coursing through the eras, right?
Yeah,
So like it's all kind of the same language for this central behavior of propagation by connection.
I like that a lot.
So be kind to each other, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's
Even be kind to Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk.
and to Jeff Bezos, and
Go buy Amazon today.
it's like the it's like the Bill and Ted thing. Be excellent to each
yes,
other.
party on, dudes.
Party on. That's great. What advice do you have for young people who are trying to get into STEM or who just want to have a meaningful career that they can be proud of?
Oh my goodness. So there's all sorts of different ways that this conversation can go, but I'll kind of go off of what I've been thinking about. One, this is something that no one ever tells you, but luck plays more a role in your life than you think it does, right? Yeah, what do you hear when you're younger? Oh, work hard and everything will be yours, and follow your dreams, follow your passion, just, like hard work and put your nose down. But there's another part of this, and it's like, it's luck, When you are applying for jobs and you're up against 100 other applicants, like whether or not you get that job that day depends on the mood of the person reviewing the applications, right? It depends on, like, did you spill coffee on yourself on the way to the interview? It's like, it's little things that aren't really in your control. So I think if we were to have an honest conversation with people, young people, about how to be happy and fulfilled in your career, you have to be happy with the process that you've established for yourself and how you're prepared for what life throws at you. But you can't be tied up emotionally in the outcomes necessarily, because a lot of things are not up to you.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. I think that's something that I sort of struggle with, is that and I think that's what you're saying, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's like I sometimes will like set my expectations a little bit too high for something, and then the outcome hits me and it's like I couldn't really control the outcome, but I'm really thrown off because I was expecting something that I didn't. So it's sort of like managing your expectations a little bit.
Right. Because when you realize that there are things that are not up to you, and, like everything you do is kind of a roll of the dice in one way. Like sometimes you'll have a good roll, sometimes you won't. And the things that are outside of your control, you just like, I know it's hard, and I still really struggle with this too. But like, know what you can control, what you can't, and what you can't always has some element of luck in it. And it's just like, sometimes things aren't going to go your way, and it's not your fault, even if you worked hard. And it's not fair when that happens, but like,
life isn't
you just
fair.
you may not have been in control over something that happened. It may not be your fault, but it's going to be your responsibility to deal with it, and you just have to like not let it rattle you so much. And again, this is something like I struggle with it. Everyone struggles with it.
Does,
it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not.
So, I mean, that would be my big thing. the other piece of advice that I give people is when you're young, if you could do it, say yes to everything so you can say no later on.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of like the FameLab story that I told you before. It's just like, even if you're like, oh, I just don't want to do this. I'm tired. I just can't. Like, just try your best especially when you're in your 20s. And, I don't want to be like, you don't know what it's like before you have like kids in a house and like all these adult responsibilities. Because like, what it's like to be stressed out. Like, come on.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, like,
it's a different form.
Yeah.
But everybody knows what it's like.
Yeah. And I'm not going to minimize that, because especially now it's uniquely hard in a way that's never been before. So if you can, try to say yes to anything that you can as a career learning opportunity, because you never know how things are going to pan out. You make connections, you gain experience, you learn things that you might like or you might not like, and either way, that's good to know. And it essentially, like, even though there's luck involved and things may not work out in your favor always, it does kind of stack the odds a little bit for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think the one thing, like, I agree with you with the luck thing. I think that another part of that is, like, I agree with you. Like, give yourself as many opportunities as you can to get lucky.
Yeah.
I think it's a big thing. I think that's the one thing my parents were like, you got
Carson's saying, everyone get lucky tonight.
Yeah. Out of context. That's gonna be a thing, not just politics.
Can I get a clip of that?
Not just politics, but out of context. We'll drop that at the end of the year. So we'll do. But I think, like, my parents were always saying, like, try this food. If you don't like it, you don't gotta eat it again.
But you gotta try it.
You gotta play soccer. Play for one season. You don't like it, don't gotta do it again. And then I think from that, like, I learned, it kind of teaches you, like, commitment, like, discipline a little bit, like putting yourself, you committed to this thing, just finish it out. And then after that, you don't got to go back to it ever again. Yeah. But I think that is something that's important.
Yeah, yeah. When you think about school, too, it's like, I'm not saying, like, educators have a, they've had a hidden agenda, but it's like it behooves them if you work hard, because, like, that's part of their job, is to make them,
absolutely,
is to make you work hard and, like, get better grades and learn things. Like, that's part of the game. And, like, the K through 12 system is a kind of a weird setup where it's like the things that you work on have a high probability of success if you put in the work. But the real world is not at all like that. So if you go from K-12 to college, which also, like, there's a little bit more variability thrown in, but generally, like, if you work hard and nothing bad happens to you, like, you do well. Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just, I think these days what's hard is there's a lot of things that could go wrong that didn't used to. So not to minimize that, but, it's still kind of the same idea where it's like you're setting up environments where generally the odds are in your favor. But when you get out of that, and, no one really prepares you for that world where it may not be in your favor anymore. There's a lot more randomness and variability to it. And, gosh, I spent years being miserable because I thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't achieve the things that I wanted to. Am I a failure? Did I not work hard enough? Am I not good enough at any of these things? And, it's like, no, I did the best that I could. I just, I got lucky sometimes, and then my luck ran out a couple other times. And that's just the way of things, So.
Absolutely. Thank you for sitting down with us today.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
It was great. I hope we can do it again. Here's the thing. If aliens are discovered, you got to come back.
Yeah.
We got to talk about it.
You'll be the first show that I go on. Don't worry.
Show.
Yeah.
Whenever they discover the aliens, you get the immediate next slot.
Oh,
and
boy.
Then we got to talk about the aliens. And then, sadly, you're going to have to stop teaching your class, I guess, because
that's true.
The search for life will be over.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a double-edged sword.
I know. I don't know where I stand on that either. I'm like, I kind of do want to find, because, in Star Trek, they're like, humanity magically becomes better somehow after.
Yeah.
Because, like, have you met us? Okay.
That's a different form of humanity in that.
Yeah,
definitely.
So,
is.
I mean, that would be nice. I would like that. But then, you're right. I wouldn't have to wouldn't teach a course, but I don't
you
know.
You could spin off some new course to teach it, but you could find something else to talk about.
Yeah, I'm sure there'd be some sort of like interplanetary ethics that we would need to
Yeah, for
develop, so,
sure. At that
yeah.
point, it's like, oh, should we take over every planet or something like that? There's
Yeah.
absolutely.
Or like how to speak glibglorp.
Whoa! The first sponsored by Google Translate or something like that. Yeah, the first class. Well,
Yeah, you could translate glibglorp to Afrikaans if you
that's
want.
crazy. Well, how's about this? If that does happen, and if that class is available, I will take it.
Okay.
I will be there to
Deal.
learn the alien language. So, thank you, sir.
All right.
It's
Thank
a
you,
pleasure.
Carson.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.